Welcome to your news analysis here on Press TV with me, Nargis Mubaleghi. This programme will be discussing Israel's separation wall and a little later, police violence in the United States. Well, on the 9th of July 2004, the International Court of Justice stated that the construction of the Israeli separation wall was contrary to international law. Every year since, the UN marks the anniversary of this opinion with heartbreaking stories of the impact of the barrier on the lives and livelihood of almost 3 million Palestinians living in the West Bank. This week, they warn that the barrier continues to have adverse effects on the everyday lives of Palestinians. They say the combination of the restricted allocations of visitor permits and the limited number and opening times of barrier gates has undermined rural livelihoods. Now, Israel began construction on the barrier in the summer of 2002. It says it is a necessary measure because of a wave of Palestinian suicide bombings in Israel. The barrier's total length is 707 kilometres, about 440 miles, and according to UN figures, more than 61% of the barrier has been completed. When it is completed, 100%, 85% of that barrier will run inside the West Bank. Well, to discuss the 6th anniversary of The Hague's decision and the separation barrier as a whole, we are joined by author and political commentator Carol Gould in London and author and Middle East affairs expert Dr. Saab Sharth in Belfast. I'd like to thank you both for being with us here on Press TV's news analysis. I'd like to start the show by reading the comments of Saab Erekat. He's the chief negotiator for the Palestinian Authority. And let's get his comments and then get a reaction from you both. We are witnessing colonisation in the 21st century with Israel's settlement enterprise in the occupied Palestinian territory, and the wall is one of the ugliest manifestations of this grave violation of international law. It separates farmers from their lands, children from their schools and families from each other. It's a land grab disguised as a security measure, and its purpose is to allow the illegal settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem to expand. Simply put, the wall is an integral part of a regime intent on heading in the direction of apartheid. Ms. Gould, that's Saab Erekat who's just come out and given his comments on this. So it picks up on some of the main issues here. One is the wall and its legality. The others is to do with the settlement expansion, and if these two are at all linked.
Well, we have to go back to the original idea of why the wall went up. It went up after the Second Intifada. There was a tremendous amount of violence, and the fact is that even on the left, many Israelis agree that the degree of violence and suicide bombings and intrusions into the center of Tel Aviv, into Israeli cities, stopped. And that is a fact. And it's a sad fact. I myself would love to see the wall come down tomorrow. But is there any guarantee that violence will stop? The facts are, on the ground, that as soon as the wall went up, the violence decreased. Look what happened today in Yakagund in Pakistan, in the Mahmoud province, which is a hotbed of Taliban and Al-Qaeda. And there is a talk about a wall between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Another suicide attack, at least 50 people dead this evening. And if there was a wall, the feeling is that the violence would decrease.
Okay.
Because the terrorists, we're talking about terrorists, we're not talking about all Palestinians, but a block of terrorists who insist on encroaching on Greater Israel and setting off bombs, bombing hospitals and schools, colleges, pizza parlors, and this all stopped.
Okay, Dr. Sharth, then, the issue being brought up here is that Israel needs this barrier to protect itself from Palestinian extremists who, for example, in 2002, were attacking inside Israel.
Okay, when we talk about terrorists, I have in my hand here roughly 55 resolutions by the United Nations councils, from the Security Council, condemning Israel and its terrorist act from the date of 18 of September 1948 up till today. So we know who is breaking the international law here, and even some of these resolutions nearly described Israel as a terrorist and rogue state. That is the international body and the international side. The Palestinians, if their land wasn't occupied and their land wasn't taken by foreigners and strangers came from East Europe and everywhere for a grab land, they won't be fighting them and terrorizing them as she described. The Palestinian fighting for their homeland was being stolen from them in a broad daylight with at the time approval of the British Empire, now with the United States of America. But if we look at the wall from other point of view, the wall as a psychological point of view is creating the ghettos which these population used to live in East Europe and somewhere in there, creating the camp mentality in the Middle East and discrimination and creating apartheid so they can have people to abuse on a daily basis in their checkpoints and they can make them suffer. It's the psychology of the fear from them for somebody who's going to resist the occupation and the psychology of humiliating the Arabic population in there. The other side of this is the business, what is the wall creating a business, a huge business. They are using the Palestinians as guinea pigs in here to test on them the technology of separation walls which the United States of America is financing, and they're using this technology in their borders with Mexico and an Israeli companies who's building that, the same ones who's doing the wall in Palestine.